of being a big power by the conventional definition of being a big power. The best that can happen to India is that India decides to pursue a slightly more modest role in the context of power politics and slightly more ambitious role in the context of human politics. That's the best best scenario. The worst scenario is this, that India with this is growing power, is growing ability to flout international opinion as well as the opinion of its own intelligentsia, will go and become more and more a closed society, trying to control its education, which it already does. India is an authoritarian system as far as educational sector goes, controlling its press and media, which it's trying to do now without not much of a success, but it's trying all the same. And continuously go on abridging the area of freedom within India for Indians. I am sure it will lead to some degree of backlash, but I think this is not unknown in the history of developing societies. They do want to develop, and an authoritarian regime in a developing society always has a slight advantage over freer societies in growth rate and things like that.
What are the worst or best case scenario for India in the sense of global North-South relationship, and what are the implications for India?
I think the best scenario is that there will be a more plural world. The North-South divide might remain, but it will become less possible for the North to dominate in the blatant manner that they do now. And the worst scenario is this, that the income disparities will widen so much that much of the South will lose the self-confidence of devising or envisioning their own future in their own way, and try to be second-hand versions of the North,
okay.
Which is, by the way, which is a self-defeating venture.
What kind of relationship do you see between India and Pakistan in 2025, and what will be the shape of South Asia to come?
I am a little bit more hopeful there, because I think there has been a identifiable change in attitude both in India and Pakistan, and I hope that infection of that new mindset will spread to Bangladesh and Nepal and Sri Lanka too. I do foresee within the next couple of decades much greater volume of trade amongst these countries, much greater exchange of tourists and visitors, and hopefully students and teachers. And I am at least very hopeful. I have just attended this annual Indo-Pak meet organized by Kuldeep Nair, who used to be called a romantic visionary, and often also a traitor to the cause of India for organizing this meet at the beginning. This year there were nearly 10,000 people, and you could see from the mood of the participants that there will be tremendous political pressure on any regime that comes into power to normalize.
Where do you see the largest Indian minority, the Indian Muslims, placed in the emerging global power scenario of India?
I'm afraid in the immediate future their condition is going to be worse. They are being identified as an unreliable community given to violence, gratuitous violence, and to terrorism, and a community that is hostile to both human governance and democratic principles. It will take a long time to break these stereotypes, and the best way to break the stereotype is to have open societies in the Muslim states, which I don't think will come easily. And it is true that part of the problem is the fact that the dominant powers in the world want some Muslim states to remain authoritarian and closed, and help them to remain so because of their strategic location or significance. But that will be self-defeating for the Muslims in the world to accept.
Will the role of religion in India diminish or increase by 2025?
I think all over the world the role of religion in public life has increased in recent years. The 19th century dream of having a perfectly secular world where nobody will believe in religion or only a small minority would lies in tatters. I think India is no exception to the rule, and one does see the people turning to religion more also in the first world, in Latin America, and to some extent in the whole of Islamic world. My personal suspicion is this, that this turn to religion is partly a reaction to the quickening pace of global change. That people, the more they get disoriented in their lifestyle, more they are exposed to radical social changes, radical changes in human norms, radical presence, radical and subversive presence of the media right in their bedrooms, the more they will turn to religion, because nobody wants to live in a rudderless world. You and I may not treat religion, but others do. And those who feel that way, that they need religion, are unlikely not to find a sizable company amongst their compatriots.
Will India be forced to change some of its norms, values and attitudes under the force of globalization?
No, in fact, I think the world will compromise with India. It will gulp its human rights record the way they gulp the human rights record of Singapore or China or South Korea or Taiwan. It has done. They have done so in the case of those countries, or for that matter in the case of the Latin American dictatorships. So in the case of India too, they will gulp it. And we Indians should make sure that we don't have to depend on the external world to fight our battles, because they will not fight that.
Has there been any significant ideological change among the Indian intellectuals, artists by the end of Cold War, and what are the ramifications for India?
I don't think the Indian intelligentsia as a group has changed that radically. Individuals have changed. We have had very creative people, but as a whole, Indian intelligentsia has not changed that dramatically. I do see some changes in other ways. For example, Indians seem more confident in creative self-expressions. I mean, they are not apologetic about Bombay films. They are not apologetic about Indian classical music. They are not apologetic about Indian English. In fact, India has gone to the world with absolutely a new kind of English, which is obviously and I might say aggressively different from either American English or Queen's English.
What changes do you see in Bollywood which you can say are synonymous with changes that are taking place globally?
I think the older norms or canons of filmmaking in India, popular filmmaking, are changing. In many respects, these films are becoming better. The average film is becoming better, but in many respects it is also becoming more like standard Hollywood films. The kind of carnivalesque atmosphere which prevailed in some of the earlier films, the kind of role they played in society, from being simultaneously you have to be musical and modeling and overly dramatic, almost theatrical. Those kind of demands, I don't think the filmmakers are responding to at all, or at least much less, which is in one sense, some will say an improvement. In another sense, one of the appeals of Indian films was exactly this part of the story. The film was supposed to be carnivalesque.